Good morning, everybody. I want to start off today by looking at the last 24 hours of total accumulated precipitation. We kind of saw our first push of rain that came out of parts of the northern plains, including some strong to severe storms that moved into parts of the upper Midwest here, including some pretty nasty ones that rolled through Wisconsin. Now, yesterday, as I was kind of looking at the forecast, this was not something that I was overly concerned about. And severe weather with this system in terms of severe thunderstorms with the next 3 waves coming through is still not a main concern overall with me with this system, but I was a bit surprised to see that. We're going to take a closer look at it in just a few seconds. This, of course, is the moisture from what was once called Hurricane Norma moving through parts of Texas. And again, this is hitting some of the driest areas here in the southern plains of the United States. I did want to show you, though, that looking back over the last 24 hours at maximum estimated hail size, we can get in here and see that some of these storms really, like this one right into this part of southern Wisconsin, really put down quite a bit of hail. And that's where we had our 8 separate reports from hail from just yesterday. Now, early this morning, we continued to watch these storms roll through, and I was just looking at the lightning data from Blitzertongue, again, one of my favorite sites on the internet for weather, and very active thunderstorm activity rolling through parts of Wisconsin this morning. A lot of fresh strikes out of this system. Plus, we can also see down in New Mexico and Arizona, even coming out of Mexico, some storms early this morning as well. If we look back over the last about 10, 12 hours of rainfall here on the radar, though, we're just seeing the beginning of what's going to be an incredibly active next 7 to 10 days. And all of this is being made possible by a very large ridge that's sitting over this, well, let me rephrase that, that's developing over the southeast. You see, it has yet to fully form in this area because we still got some pretty cold air early this morning here. Now, this, again, was another bit of a surprise. And what I mean by that is how cold we were able to get the air into North Carolina. Now, I know there's a lot to be said here about what was often called these backdoor cold fronts that come in this direction. And certainly, if you had asked me yesterday morning, I could have told you that, yeah, we were expecting some cooler air here and then, of course, into New England. But my goodness, that made it pretty far to the south this morning with their, with their frost advisories. We'll take a look at those temperatures in a few moments. We have flood watches out down here on the Red River, getting into parts of Oklahoma. And then this is where all the action is going to start to take place. So winter storm watches out, winter storm warnings out for a big part of Montana, and then getting over here into parts of Wyoming. And again, we can see these extending back farther to the north and west. And this will just be the beginning of what will likely be a very colorful week in terms of looking at our all hazards weather map. And again, you can find this at just ag-wx.gov, or excuse me, I remember ag-wx.com or weather.gov is a great place to go get this. That's where I pull the data. All right, so newest updates. We're just looking here again at what this pattern is going to be up to. So large southeastern ridge. Tammy we'll talk about in a few minutes. Very dry, temperatures rebounding here. We still have 1, 2, and 3. Actually, I should have reversed that. 1, 2, and 3 shortwaves that are going to come through. The first one's going to be the big snowmaker here that comes out of the northwest, coming out of Montana into North Dakota. But there's more behind it. It's going to hit the Cascades. And then this first wave, the one that's farthest to the south, is going to help push some of the moisture out ahead of it. And that's why we're watching for some very heavy rainfall from Texas over to Missouri, that whole stretch into there. Now, I just wanted to mention that we do need to keep an eye on Tammy. So Hurricane Tammy out here. Watch this reset. You'll see here in a few moments. This is where Tammy's expected to go. And if you notice, the forecast tracks are interesting. Some of it take it this way, some take it that way. What it's running into is that ridge. And there was a weather forecast the other day that took what was left of Tammy and brought it all the way to the Yucatan Peninsula. European model had that out as a simulation. So this just shows you the size and strength of the setup for this bigger event that's going to be happening across North America here. So just want to let you know we still have some tropical activity to be talking about. On the snow side of this, though, let's come back to that. I just want to show you, this is a map looking at the probability of getting 8 inches of snow in the next 3 days. So remember, we talked about 1, 2, 3 different waves coming through. This is the middle one. This is its best chance here, coming out of like Yellowstone, straight up into central Montana, and then out east all the way here into North Dakota into parts of southern Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Yesterday, remember, we put down snow right into this area from kind of the first round of all of this snow. But that's a high probability. In fact, let's just step it up again. This is the chance of 12 inches of snow. So right now, the WPC has put down this area here, and the Cascade Mountains as well, that's got a 50 to 70% chance of grabbing a foot of snow out of just the first system that's coming through. Remember, there's another wave behind this. We'll take a look at the snowfall totals in a few moments. What's making it all possible, though, is this. This is the beginning of the development of that southeast ridge. Here is our wave that's farthest to the south. That's the southern short wave. Here's the one that's coming through in the next 72 hours to deliver all that snow. And we're still watching one more part of this run around the top of this big omega setup here. That's going to be the last wave coming through. So like I said, next 7 to 10 days, very, very active. Now, to show you how it's all going to kind of go down, let's look at the top-down view of the atmosphere. We're going to go straight to the kind of the North Pole view of the trough ridge pattern. So this is the omega block we're talking about, and here's wave 1. Wave 2 is coming in right here, and this is the one that's farthest to the south. I know I keep renaming and numbering these things. You know what I'm talking about. There are 3 waves to watch. There's our southeast ridge. Okay, playing through the day on Tuesday, we have the lead wave ejecting. The wave that's following it here is cutting in on the backside, and the cutoff low farther to the south. That's what I should have talked about. The cutoff low farther to the south, still moving from Mexico into Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas by Thursday. So what we've got here is a wave on the back that's not moving too quickly. The cutoff low moves this far in about 3 days, and the southeast ridge just continues to build. Okay, so here we are Thursday, working our way into Friday. And this is when this all starts to progress east. So it takes a while to move east because omega patterns are more meridional flow than west to east flow. So this whole pattern has no reason to move forward because it's moving more north-south. And by forward, I mean to the east. So what we'll watch is late in the week when the really cold air digs into that trough and finally shoves this whole thing to the eastern United States. So that is the week on that I keep talking about in the pattern for the midsection of the country. We then go back into some weak ridging over the west, deep cold air east, and our southeast ridge is now sitting way over here, just to the east of Bermuda. But what's following this is a much more southward extended part of the jet stream. So we're going to see, once we get out there to about the 2nd, 3rd, 4th of November, that the week off we're going to get behind this system is going to come right back on with another thing that's going to push into the west coast. And that thing is an extended piece of the jet stream. So we got all that to still talk about here. Let's go right to our high-res models to see how the beginning of this kind of comes out. So this was early this morning here. And as we play forward throughout the day on Tuesday, we're going to watch a shield of precipitation line itself up all around the edge of this big subtropical high. So this is what's left of Norma. So if you're getting rain here in Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, and Missouri, that's all moisture from Hurricane Norma. And as we watch this play forward, you see all this moisture out ahead of this is just running the edge of this ridge, while the second, more vigorous wave starts to make its way through the northwest, and by overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning starts to spread some heavy snow right into this corridor we've been discussing all week. So this is going through the morning on Wednesday. We're playing out there to Wednesday midday, Wednesday afternoon, and evening. So remember, we still have another wave following this, but that gets us out there to Wednesday night. And what we're just going to see is that snow continue to spread along this line while we watch the subtropical ridge just push the moisture into this corridor. So multiple rounds of rain coming into this particular region, and this is the first round of snow from the first wave coming out of the Pacific Northwest. Okay, from here, I got to flip you over to the comparison between the GFS on the left and the Euro on the right. Let's pick this up Tuesday night. So tonight, playing forward into tomorrow morning. So there it is. The timing of the snow and the rain in the GFS is about the same as it is in the European. So I like the consistency here. We go through Wednesday night into early Thursday morning. We're going to watch that snow spread along this corridor. And again, just multiple rounds of heavier rain coming in through here. So I know a lot of folks in this area probably rapidly trying to get whatever harvest they can get done. We have a little bit more time farther to the east here in the Corn Belt. This is Thursday morning, getting into Thursday night. Now we're getting into Friday, and you can see this second push of snow on the backside, and then we're going to watch the wave. There it is. This is the last one now, coming out of Colorado by Saturday. Now, you notice how much farther to the south this low is going to be? It's got a lot more colder air on the northern side of it, plowing through parts of the Pacific Northwest, but really Montana coming out of the Canadian prairie. And this is going from Saturday into Sunday, and look how far to the south that one dips. This is the one that could be bringing in the chance for some snow from Colorado, maybe clipping parts of Iowa, Nebraska in between. It's there in the ECMWF. Again, this is Sunday morning, and it's kind of here in the GFS as well. So that's just kind of the third round of this. And then what we're going to have to watch after that is finally this front pushes through the subtropical ridge that's sitting over the southeast, and all of that cold air just comes invading in on the backside of it. So the temperature swings in the midsection of the country are going to be just pretty dramatic. I mean, 90s yesterday, and we're going to be replacing that with temperatures that might be 40 to 50 degrees colder than that by the end of the week or the start of next week. So let's get an idea on some of the totals here. I just went ahead and queued up the GFS 7-day forecast for total accumulated snowfall. Just a quick reminder, 4 inches is where I break away from the grays. I get into this deep shade at around a foot. So this, again, heavy snows cascades coming out of the Central Rockies, probably the heaviest in Yellowstone. And then right in through here, there's a corridor where 8 to 12 plus inches of snow is possible. This would be the next round coming through afterwards. This is the weekend one, delivering snow to the Central Rockies, then getting out into parts of South Dakota, southern Wyoming, Nebraska, and parts of Iowa. That is the forecast from the GFS. That's the one I want to show you first today. This is the European model. And I got to be honest, even though there are nuances and differences, this overall is a pretty consistent forecast when we think about what we're attempting to do here. It's not perfect, but it's consistent. On the rain side of it, this is the GFS forecast. This would be the European. So we're looking at total precipitation. So, of course, all of this is snow. But you can see overall it's got the placement of this big subtropical ridge about the same, where it's expecting the heaviest rains down here in the southern plains, encroaching on parts of the Mid-South is about the same. And this is going to go a long way to fill up a lot of rivers that feed into the Mississippi. I'm pretty excited about seeing that. In fact, the Mississippi made a little bump up today to be 8 feet below low stage. So after being down to 12 feet below low stage over the weekend, it's already recovered 4 feet, and this is all coming into the river very soon. Now, just to show you something here, when you're kind of looking at this, the differences in the models are pretty stark in certain areas. Like, look at this part right here in central Oklahoma. Right around Norman, just as an example. But overall, we would say that the European model is the wetter model. That would be this shade of color for Texas, for much of the Midwest, getting up to the eastern Great Lakes, all the way to the Northeast. Overall, I think the European model is the wetter model in this situation, except for a few areas. Just a reminder, by the way, if you go to agweather.com, ag-wx.com, there's always easy ways by which you can see your individual location. So you can click here if you're on your phone, use that one to see one on the phone. But if you're over here, I was looking at Norman, Oklahoma before this, just an interesting place. You start typing in, you have to click on the name so that it puts the ID number in there. That's just how I design this system. I'm not a front-end designer, okay? I'm a data scientist, so this is how I build things. So you click submit, and what I want to show you about this is after it builds your forecast, you click here, you can actually come down to the bottom and compare the models. So click on this radio button, ECMWF GFS NBM 10-day precip, and you can actually see from the 0Z run, that's the most recent, how each of the models, like the European model, is putting down precip for Norman. And you can see the European model has a 10-day total right now for Norman at 7 inches. The GFS is at 8.79 inches. The NBM is at 6.27. But you can get a sense of how they're putting the timing of each one of these systems together. You can also look at the temperatures as well. And like we talked about, there's the warmth now, and there's the drop-off. And now we're talking about frost risks down here once we get into basically the day before, the day of Halloween, and then the first few days of November. So all sorts of stuff to be looking at here. And as you can imagine, you can also take a look at the winds. We're going to get some pretty gusty winds out of this as well. Okay, next, probability maps. This is the chance of getting an inch of snow. This is the chance of getting 3 inches of snow. So again, you look at the probabilities down here. Let's go ahead and step it up to 6 inches. And again, we're watching that corridor right into there as our heaviest snow band. And here's the chance. Whoops, that's 18. So it's mostly going to be in the Cascades and also right here in Yellowstone. But let's go back to the 12 inch. There we go. That's the one I wanted to show you. And of course, on the end of this, as I told you, the jet stream is expected to extend pretty dramatically and rip on across the open Pacific and eventually target the west again. So as we watch all that set up, I'm going to go back and show you same map, but let's go over to the liquid side of this. So here's the best chance at over an inch in the next week, the best chance at over 2 inches. Look at that. And the chance for over 4. So where it's already raining this morning, because we have multiple rounds coming into this area, the chances for some extremely heavy rainfall still sits in the forecast. Now, as I take this, let's go back to that 1 inch. Watch the west. From day 10 beyond, do you see the west really increasing? That is because when we watch the end of this forecast time period, in other words, about November 2nd through November the 8th, we're going to see the jet stream, watch here, really extend itself into the west. And this is not, just be honest, this isn't typical November or October behavior when you have an El Nino. But the result of that is the week 2 forecasts are still wet in the west, and the GFS is catching up to it. So we get a little bit of a break here, colder air coming in, but then we're going to see things shift back to a week-on pattern in the Midwest as soon as this goes through. Okay, from there, let's talk about temperatures. Again, this morning, the surprise for me was how cold it was able to get in parts of North Carolina. We expected it in Virginia, but not here in North Carolina. There's the buildup of warm air out ahead of this Arctic air that's going to be coming down, and that's why we look over the next 7 days and we see the frost risk just continue to expand farther and farther into the south and into the west. So everywhere in gray here is where we're expecting a frost, including this morning over the next 7 days. I'm going to look at your high temperatures first. This is today's highs. Getting into tomorrow on Wednesday, look at that warmth out ahead of this thing, and then how brutally cold the air gets in parts of Montana by Thursday into Friday. We'll take a look at those morning lows in a second. By Saturday, getting into Sunday, that front continues to advance. We're going to push that colder air next Monday even farther into the south, and then eventually get all the way to the southeast. So by Monday, this is the leading edge of where that cold air is going to be. So like I said, the Omega setup is a slow progression setup. It doesn't move quickly across the country. But look at this. This is Friday's temperature contrast for the morning lows. We've got single digits to probably some areas going below zero here in parts of Montana. And where I live in Champaign, 63 degrees as the overnight low. I mean, that would be a decent daytime high, but that's how warm things are going to be. We're just going to watch that cold air slide and advance farther and farther to the south by next Monday, bringing with it the frost chances that you saw on the gray map I showed you a moment ago. No real change overall, except I got to sign in, I guess, to Weather Bell. And there we go. I want to show you Weather Models, another one of my favorite sites here. This is the latest we've got for the 10-day or 15-day forecast for temperature anomalies. It's a 5-day sliding window. So this is now, next 5 days. There's the cold air advancing. And this is what things look like day 10 through 15. So we talked about how the jet extending here floods this area with a bit more mild air. So your flow is going to come in and dive like that a little bit, keeping it cooler in through this whole corridor down into the east. And this is going to bring on the next round of systems once we get out there past like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of November. So I like this. This is making sense to me. What I want to watch most carefully is this. We keep coming back to these diagrams, and right now this equatorward extended jet is going to be critical to watch to see how active the month of November is. And we talked about it yesterday in our long-range forecast, and we're going to give you another update on that later on this week, probably on Friday morning. That'll be the key piece to watch, and whether or not the MJO stays in this particular position over here in phase 1 or phase 8. We talked a lot about that. What is interesting about this is that this phase 1 or phase 8 of the MJO is not playing out the way I would have expected it in South America. Specifically, phase 1 is typically wet over here. Phase 8 is typically wet. You look back over the last month, that's been an area that's been drier. We've seen of our flooding rains down here, especially coming back again recently into southern Brazil. But I've been scratching my head a lot over the last 48 hours or so thinking about Brazil because of some of the reports that I've received about just some terrible germination and some major replanting that's going to happen despite the planting pace being 10% above the 5-year average like in Mato Grosso. In other words, I think there are holes in this map that we don't really fully see because we don't observe precipitation very well in South America. There's not the radar network and rain gauge network spread across this massive country like we have like in the US or in Europe, just as an example. So I went using some of their own resources at INMET. That's the name of their National Meteorological Service. And I've been looking at the month of October in terms of total accumulated precipitation. So we can see the flooding farther to the south, and I know there's some weird stuff around the back of this. Again, this is an experimental product they've made. They've been running it for a few years, so I wonder if they're ever going to make it a permanent product. But I think there are more holes in this than I've been alluding to be honest. I using some satellite data, using some other sources, I thought rains were better, but I think there's some actual problems in here into some big producing states. And I messaged a good friend of mine and colleague that lives in Goiás this morning, and what he reports back to me later today, I'll tell you what he told me later on this afternoon when he replies, so I can kind of fill in some of these holes here. But I will say this, I was out looking at some NDVI data, and if you look at Mato Grosso and you look at Mato Grosso do Sul, you can see that the historical average is the black line. Last year is this line in through here, and we're currently sitting here. So I don't like to use NDVI data when we get into the heart of the season. There's too much cloud cover and contamination. But at the beginning, I'm looking at Mato Grosso do Sul, and I'm seeing some problems. Just at least we're off of a year ago. This could be some poor germination issues, and I'll be honest, I didn't think this was the case. I'll be anxious to see the end of the month's data to see if it continues to stay well below its average. I also want to point out, if I can click off of these, I want to take you down to like Cordoba, and they're in the basement here on NDVI. This is long-standing drought issues we can add to this Buenos Aires and Santa Fe. And again, this is way off, and it shows you the 2-year drought. See how this is lining up together? This is a 2-year long drought that's impacting this particular region, and it continues to be problematic because the new forecasts went much drier in that area. Still flooding in southern Brazil. So this is southern parts of Mato Grosso do Sul, so the southern part of Mato Grosso of the south, getting into Paraguay, Paraná, Santa Catarina. We've seen more rains move into Sao Paulo and Minas Gerais, but dryness here continues to be an issue. And that's not what you'd expect with MJO Phase 8 or Phase 1. We'd expect this area to be filling in. But that shows you how we're still pulling in moisture from the wrong source, not the really abundant source from the north yet. So I got to monitor this more closely and keep thinking hard on it and report back to you what I hear from my friends down there. But with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Have a good rest of your day. We'll talk in the morning. Thanks.